Hello, welcome to another episode of The Giant Couch with me, Andy Rintmore, and the Giant Pod producer and couchman.
It's me, Harry Williams.
Today, we're talking to you guys about the new Biffy Clyro documentary that we just watched, Cultural Sons of Scotland, which is documenting their recording process for the latest offering, which is, and I can't ever remember the name.
The Myth of Happily Ever After.
That's the one. That's the one. It's because it's kind of like a duo, isn't it, with the album before that?
Yeah, so it's like Celebration of Endings and then Myth of Happily Ever After.
That's right.
I've already taken to just calling them the Red and Blue albums.
Right, that's what I should do. It's a bit wordy for me.
Yeah. So it's on Amazing Prime. It came out today.
Yes.
Although this will probably be uploaded tomorrow, Saturday. But anyway, it came out on the Friday. And... well, first, I think we should establish our Biffy credentials before we go any further. I'm not exactly sure where you stand on them. I would say I'm in sort of super fan territory at this point.
You're definitely in super fan.
I mean, I was very excited because obviously the gig that's at the kind of climax of this thing, I was at, and that was, them talking about getting out of lockdown and it being like a huge release and all that. Like, that was the first gig I'd been to in years, and, it really was that. And, my first gig I ever went to, pretty much, was the Wembley Revolutions live album as well.
Oh, you Wembley Arena Stadium?
Wembley Arena 2010.
Right.
Yeah, there was a lot of snow that week. We thought we might not make it. I was like 14, I think. Yeah, one of my first gigs.
That's a really great live album, and it's a document of where they are in their career at that time. Because I imagine it in that moment, playing Wembley Arena was probably almost a bit of a gamble. That's the energy I get from them, is that they're like, well, we'll book it and see how many turn up. And they probably surprised themselves with just how many people showed up and sang everything back at them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was sold out in there. I certainly don't remember it feeling empty, and what a great DVD that turned out to be. Point is, I've been with them since about then. I've seen them on every album cycle tour since then, at least once, sometimes twice. Wow. Love them. Great guys.
I've seen Biffy. I'm not sure when I got into Biffy. I definitely got into Biffy. I'm more into Biffy now than I've ever been. But then anyone can say that because there's more music now than there used to be. But I can't remember the moment I got into them. It was probably when I realised that there was a rock band that was actually doing rock stuff that was on Radio 1 quite often.
So would it have been like kind of puzzle?
I think it was about Puzzle
Who's
Time.
Got a Match, something like that.
Yeah, it was about Puzzle Time, and it's just kind of like bits and bobs for me. But as the time's gone on, and I've listened to more albums, I've seen them. I think I've seen them 3 times now. I saw them headline Reading Festival, and I don't know what year that was. Maybe 15.
That sounds about right.
14, 15.
Yeah,
I'm unsure. And anyway, it was the one. It must have been.
Ellipsis.
Opposites. No, it was Opposites.
That would have been 2013 then.
So they had the tree on the stage.
Right, yeah.
And as the show rolled on, the tree with a projection and various other lights and trickery and stuff, the tree became like a cardiovascular system, and then the tree became that's right, because there was lungs around it, so it was like the cardiovascular system with the lungs, and then the tree was a tree, and then it was all kinds of other things, and the way that they managed to, like, the tree was a sort of a malleable centerpiece to their show. I thought that was very exciting, lots of pyro and stuff, and that was the moment where I really, like, after they finished, I was just like, oh my god, and then I saw them again playing Isle of Wight Festival. One of the only bands in the daytime of that entire festival that had pyro.
Yeah.
So, I was like, oh, well, shit, yeah, great. They're just like chucking like flames out and stuff, and it's like still daylight.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I can't remember who came on after them, but they were like second or third before the headline act, and they didn't have any pyro or anything, and it just kind of felt a bit lackluster.
Yeah.
Like, I'd seen, like, Biffy really stole it really there. And then the last time I saw them was on the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury, again, like midday, and they really fucking bought it again. But I would like to go and see them again in their own gig, in their own territory.
I mean, yeah, this was Glasgow Green, it was a proper, like, homecoming show. I mean, they're not from Glasgow, but, like, I'm assuming that's their kind of nearest big city, and that, like, when they're on the up and, starting to get gigs in Glasgow, that probably felt like stuff was starting to happen for them. So I think it's probably, a very important town for them. And, like, it was so beautiful, man. I just feel like Scottish people connect more with their music. And it was like quite nice to just go and sneak in as an Englishman and sort of soak up all that good vibe, you know.
Yeah, and it wasn't it a. I'm not sure if you've mentioned this already, but it was a pilot performance because it was in the lockdowns, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was like when was it? It was like September 2021.
Right.
So it was like Scotland was still kind of unlocking at that point, and this was like one of the first big gigs back because the day after, like that weekend, was Transmit Festival.
Right.
So they were basically, we were worried whether it was going to happen or not for months. It got rescheduled many times, and then it moved venue and everything. And then on the day, there was like they were saying there's going to be a storm. So it was like, we'd driven like 400 miles. And it was a pretty tense sitting in the Premiere Inn, just like looking at the grey clouds. But yeah, there was like 50,000 people there. So I guess they were just sort of using that to kind of get this staff trained up, like, because they had to do like COVID passes and everything. But it was such a release, and it was the first big gig back in Scotland for, I guess nearly 2 years at that point.
Madness. And like, so this documentary is called Cultural Sons of Scotland. I think at this point, as you said, they're not from Glasgow, but at this point, I imagine Scotland kind of feel like they own them.
Yeah,
like they're like, no, they're ours. That wasn't the Scottish.
I think there's I think there's a symbiosis,
Yeah.
And they're saying that, like, let's get into the sort of documentary proper now. So it's kind of it's an interesting mix in this, and it's kind of partly your sort of classic kind of
Studio
charting
diary.
the history of the band, and then it's a studio diary at the same time. So it's sort of like, it's like their anthology, but obviously they won't have had loads of footage from back in the day. Like, they've got cool bits here and there.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, like a very nicely shot making of the album. And then it's sort of, you get those little extra bits, like, they climb up on a silo and have a good look round the fields. They go and hassle some cows. They go back to their childhood garage. And it's sort of just, it's like, it's nice to see, because I don't feel like they've had that much media stuff really in that way. Like, they're overdue something like this, like a sort of proper, history of the band. And I don't think I've ever heard, James and Ben speak for that long. Like, they're in interviews and they will answer questions, but like, to see it, I've never really seen them be candid and natural for such a long period of time. So
yeah, they're a bit of a strange rock band in that I truly do believe they're one of the greats.
Absolutely.
One of the greats. And at some point, they may slide into whatever becomes classic rock. Although they don't have the classic rock sound or the sound that we deem to be classic rock now. But they are a classic band. I think they're a band that will be looked back on much more fondly than they are at the moment.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, I think people will be like, oh my God, how lucky were we? Because they're sort of like one of the last bands in England. Well, I know they're Scottish, but they're flying that, in the UK, flying that big rock act flag. Because, like I said, like they get Radio 1 play.
Yeah.
And other than Foo Fighters, and maybe now Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, they're one of the only bands with big crunchy baritone guitars and all this stuff going on that gets love from Radio 1, and that's really rare. And I've just seen that Download Festival have announced them. I think they're the Saturday or the Sunday night headliner.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, finally.
Yeah.
Because they've existed in this weird realm, haven't they, where okay, they're Radio 1 and they're kind of mainstream, but then also they haven't really been claimed by the rock and metal world either. No. And it's a very strange career, I think. Yeah, they are in a strange position. And me and a friend were talking about this a while ago. Like, we looked them up on Instagram, like how many followers the account had. And I think it was around, I want to say it was around 200,000. Right. Which in Instagram terms isn't that many, really. No. And that sort of surprised me. But I think when people discover them, they either just sort of ignore it or they become your favourite band. Yeah. Because there's so much to enjoy there. And I think like when people discover them, it's kind of they're like,
I've been waiting for this music my whole life, you know. And there's like a whole back catalogue there. Like by the time I discovered them, they already had like 6 albums or something.
Yeah.
And it's like feels like your little secret a bit, you know. And then when you meet someone else who's been initiated, like in fact at uni, I remember on my masters seeing a guy wearing a Similarities t-shirt and being like, well, he's all right, and you know, and then you know we were mates the whole way through. Like it's like a little secret club, you know.
Yeah, I had that when I was a teenager, and I was really into the Misfits. And I didn't know anyone else that knew the Misfits, yet it seemed to be that the Misfits were one of the most legendary cult punk bands of all time. And of course, now I know that millions and millions of people love them. But it would be weird if I'd see someone wearing a Misfits t-shirt. It's tribal, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
tribalism.
yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, all right, that's cool. And I'd want to go and talk to them about the band because I didn't have that many people to talk to about the band. So it's a funny thing, isn't it? It is tribalism. But back to the documentary, I feel like if I have a criticism for it, it's very short.
It is quite short, but bear in mind,
sweet.
Bear in mind, I mean, I think the first thing we ever reviewed doing in this sort of style was the Beatles Get Back, which was 8 hours long.
Yes.
So I think everything's going to feel short in comparison. But yeah, I mean, I was curious. I was like, you know, I mean, a sort of behind the scenes featurette of the album could have easily been 2 hours in and of itself.
Yeah.
And then, you know, another 2 hours charting the band. But I mean, you know, I mean, it's clear that it's sort of been done. You know, their ethos is still quite DIY. You know, like the list of credits at the end, there wasn't loads of people involved. You know, it's kind of a bit of a punk project, and so I guess you know they probably only had so much money and time to film, and just sort of wanted to get something out before while the album was relevant, really, because that's its main focus, really, isn't it? Is tying in with the album, and then it's sort of you know bits of back history here and there.
I liked the back history. It was really great to see the back and you know A and B of you know them as sort of like scruffy teenage boys were in a band that clearly didn't really have an image at that point, and they were just sort of finding it. Yeah.
So we get like a fair few photos of the various like dodgy haircuts over the years. We get like you know the frosted tips with the long hairs. You know, I mean, there's like that it kind of cuts through the ages, doesn't it? And then there's the suave period when it's like them on Jules Holland, all looking you know very dapper.
They're
a chameleon, you know.
Yeah, it's great to see them evolving and but like becoming like they're becoming rock stars. You see the journey, but they're almost. It's weird. They don't want. I don't know how to describe it because Simon Neil is definitely a rock star and he leans into it, but he's also not a rock star at the same time. It's very strange, isn't it? It's very grounded. It doesn't feel like they've been seduced by being rock stars or that sort of world. Yet they. Oh, it's a very strange one.
Well, I think it's interesting because they were saying like. About their recording process for previous albums. They're like, we'd go to LA almost so they could be a bit like, you know, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
But they take that there to LA, they do it there, they kind of soak up on the vibe, and then they come back, they keep coming back to Scotland.
Yeah.
And they're not in their hometown, but they're kind of in the same area, you know. And like, you know, we saw their houses. I mean, they're nice houses, but they're not like, you know, huge country piles away from everyone. Like they still are just like kind of normal people.
Yeah.
Like they're just, you wouldn't necessarily suspect you were living next to a rock star, would you?
No, the most extravagant thing I've seen was, I think it's Simon's red Porsche. And that was the most rock star thing.
But even that, it was, you know, I mean... You know, you save up, a sort of normal person could get one of them as well. It wasn't like some super brand new fancy one. Like they got, and I was saying as well with like the gear they were using to record, like they've got nice stuff there, but none of it's like ridiculous, like 10 grand boutique mics. It's all just sort of, you know, if you went to, you know, Gear for Music or whatever, and just bought like, you know, reasonably good prosumer level kit.
Yeah. Now, what is prosumer?
So prosumer, so it's like, so you got like consumer,
the pro end of the consumer.
So,
market,
exactly. So it's like, they're good products, but they're kind of accessible to the sort of everyday oik, basically.
Right, okay, cool.
They're not like super boutique built to order shit, you know.
Okay.
That's what I mean by that.
Right. Yeah, and it was interesting to see what a sketch like because they're a band which have some of the. Now this is a hot take. Some of the biggest scale in terms of their sound. They create such a large soundscape of what they do, and then to see how they're recording it, they basically look like they're in a shed.
Well, they are in a shed. I mean, they're on a dairy farm.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's such a, you kind of imagine it being done on the floor of Abbey Road with the orchestra in another room or something. Do you know what I mean?
Everyone's on leather wingback chairs and Chesterfield sofas.
Right, a bit like Get Back.
Yeah,
sort of like, you imagine this stuff being recorded in such a huge, over-the-top place because you think, that's the only place that can contain that kind of energy. And like capture it, but it's not. It's like I feel like my granddad's workshop was just the same size.
Definitely,
when I was a kid.
And it's so great to see how kind of hands-on they are with that. I mean, I don't know how much that's the case sort of in their normal process, but like, they had their guitar tech guy there.
Yeah.
They had that producer, I can't remember his name, I'll insert it in text here. And the one person filming them, and then that was it. And so it's like, they even had, I think, Ben and the guitar tech were like the chefs. You saw like all of them like plugging in mics, moving baffles around, setting up pedals and everything. Like, it's so humble kind of, and then they get all set up, and then they just make a brilliant racket. And it's like, I think that's something, I think it was James was saying in one of the kind of Talking Heads interviews, and it's kind of, what you were saying about how they were doing a festival slot in the middle of the day but still had pyros. It's like, no matter what it is, they throw the kitchen sink at it. They put all of themselves into everything, and I liked them as well talking about how they kind of made a rod for their own back by taking their shirts off, but they had to start touring in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, when you're in the middle of sort of Scandinavia somewhere in December. But
it's like solidarity with their fans, isn't it? They're not trying to say like we're different from you. It's like we're first among equals almost.
We're shirtless and sweaty too.
Yeah, and I think that is just that ethos bleeds through completely, and the fact that they're like just on a dairy farm in Scotland, all just down the road from their houses, they're plugging in their own mics, they're getting their own amps set up and everything. It's all, and the fact their guitar tech, he was one of their mates they knew him from ages ago, didn't they? And
he's been with them since the early days. And I imagine he's sort of just like probably started off selling the merch and driving the van, and then like maybe handing a guitar over after a year or two when they got.
Then he started restringing them. Then he fixed a valve in an amp, and before you knew it, he was around. But, I mean, a good guitar tech is worth their weight in gold. So shout out to Churd.
And what a beard as well.
A fine beard. Yeah.
Crazy beard on him. That's a testament, isn't it? When you see a band and they've had the same crew working for them for a long time, it's like, well, there's just no way that these guys can be secret assholes.
Yeah.
Because there's so many bands out there, there's so many tours to hop on. If you, like you said, if guitar techs are worth their weight in gold, if he is as good as they say he is, and I believe it because he's got a pedal company or something.
Gone Fishing Effects.
Right, so he knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Clearly, if they were all dickheads, he'd just jump on the next tour with someone else, wouldn't he? Because if he's that good, then he'd work anywhere.
In fact, that's something that you said to me while we were watching it. It was when it was kind of towards the end, and we'll jump around chronologically a lot in this. You'll get used to it.
Yeah.
It was kind of near the end, and it was Ben and James' birthday, and they were like handing out presents to each other, and it was all just so wholesome and lovely, and like there was none of that stuff that guys usually do, where we're just sort of mean to each other from a defensive point of view.
I didn't see any birthday beatings.
No birthday beatings, no birthday bumps. It was all just like, it was so pure and wholesome, and like I think you said, like, how are they still so nice to each other?
Right.
I mean, because this is more your area of expertise,
right,
in the touring in a van with your mates.
I've spent weeks in a van with the same three, but I've spent weeks in a van with more people than that, and it is like you have a blast, you have a great time, but you do have to put a bit of effort into getting along. Like it's normally so easy,
but you have to sort of work at it a bit more.
But going into it that it's like, well, we're sleeping on floors, we've got a job to do every night, pretty much for this long extended period of time, which is a physical thing. There's fatigue in traveling. You'd think sitting on your ass and watching like America or Europe roll by is easy, and it's really good, but it's really tiring because you get to the gig and you're like, oh my god, I'm just like, I haven't done anything all day and now I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And
I'm 600 miles away from where I started.
Right. And you're eating crappy food,
Yeah.
and drinking and smoking or whatever, and then you have like 45 minutes of like sheer adrenaline, blast, blast, blah, the show, and then it's done again.
Yeah.
And then it's time to pack up and do it all over again. And there's like, what's the word? Inertia.
Yeah.
That once you've been on the move for that long and never stayed anywhere for more than like one night, starts to feel really weird, and you start to just feel just like
a sort of ghost. You don't exist.
Just a strange feeling. And so you do, as a big long answer to what you asked, but you do have to put effort into the relationships, into like checking yourself, making sure you're not being irritating, or you're not like, make sure you're not smelly, make sure you're not farting in the van.
Yeah,
like this, right? It's easy to let standards slip a little bit.
I imagine particularly at that sort of level as well, when it's like it's your first time, you've managed to somehow scrape a van that you and all your gear can fit in.
Yeah.
It's like that, and you haven't got hotels or anything, or even like, pillows on the floor of the van or anything. It's rough, and obviously that's a sort of Lord of the Flies like situation where touring at a high level, I assume, is very comfortable, isn't it?
I imagine they have some comfort now.
Yeah. You got a fucking silver service dinner and a PS5 on your bus and like all this, but particularly at that low level, I guess if you can survive that when you're in your 20s, you've got fuck all money. You don't even know if you've got enough petrol to get to the gig, and all this. If you can survive that, by the time you've got, a nice bus and you're flying to some of the dates and you don't have to set up your own amps anymore, I guess you don't have to actively maintain that as much. You
don't, but then you've got a lot more time to irritate each other, I guess. And it's funny how like there's a lot of bands that make it, and I don't know what making it means. I guess it's not like millions of people like your band. And
if you can I think if you can comfortably pay for a mortgage without having to have anything other than music as your job, you've made it.
Yeah, I see it as that, and I also see it as if the band just stops in 30 years, people will still want to listen to you. That's kind of my other idea of making it as well, is just having making an impact that echoes for a little longer than maybe the band does physically. But it is interesting, and I wasn't shocked by how nice to each other they were, and it wasn't even false. It wasn't like, oh, the cameras are here. They just genuinely just really care about each other and have a really good time. And I made a joke. I said, "Oh, it made Sick Ones look dysfunctional," but we weren't. We weren't. But
do you have any?
They're so bloody nice to each other. It's crazy.
Any stories stick out of internal band strife on the road or in the studio or anything?
No real big fights or arguments with Sick Ones.
Just a simmering resentment.
Just
a simmering low-level resentment that was never vocalised.
I think he. I definitely thought I was helping, but I didn't help him at all. In that regard.
Right, I'm going to go back to my notes. So I was making some more notes from this. There's other sort of little things I noticed. This is sort of, many of the things I noticed are sort of proof of how humble and nice they seem.
Yeah.
Such as Simon has the same refillable bottle of water throughout, so he's very eco-conscious. All of them are Rolly men. They can. I'm sure they can afford straight cigarettes.
They could probably go Marlboro Gold.
Yeah, I'm sure they could.
Yeah.
But no, they're rolling their own cigarettes. Humble men.
Not like Snoop Dogg. Have you heard about Snoop Dogg? He
employs a joint roller, doesn't he?
Yeah, and they make... What is it they make?
I heard 50 grand a year.
Yeah, I heard that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds good. Good job. I'll do it.
Yeah. And his top tip is that he microwaves his joint for about... I don't know what it is. It's on YouTube somewhere. I'll try and show you later. But we're going wildly off track. But yeah, he rolls his joint, or his joint roller rolls his joint, and then they will blast it in the microwave for a very short period of time, but enough that something activates or happens. And then apparently it's just the world's best joint.
Well, there you go. But I mean, that's what happens when you get arrogance. You have hubris that comes with wealth. I'm sure they roll their own joints and microwave them too. I mean, yeah, they were cooking the dinners, weren't they? And I have to say, I was expecting, some sort of horrible band-looking food. They did a sort of nice kind of...
they were eating all right, weren't they?
Yeah, salmon and salad kind of thing. Like, they're eating well.
Yeah.
It looks like a lovely little operation they got going on up there.
Yeah, they're not a broke band.
No.
They operate a bit like a broke band, but they have non-broke band things.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I noticed, actually. I mean, I don't know if this was a COVID thing, or because I assume, there's probably only 6 of them. They could probably be in a bubble and kind of work closely together.
Imagine so, yeah.
But they were saying on Witch's Cup that they had to use VST brass. They couldn't get a real brass band in.
For the layman, VST,
virtual studio technology, but basically like a digital instrument, brass samples. Basically.
So you put. I know what you mean now, but so what you do
you're
is
playing trumpets on a keyboard or brass on a keyboard, basically, or programming it in a DAW, digital audio workstation, Pro Tools. I'll stop using TLAs, 3-letter acronyms. And, whether that was a COVID thing or the label just like, oh, sorry lads, we can't give you $1,000 to get a brass band in for the day. Like, they are still working with some limitations, they certainly can't just demand anything they want. Those days of the kind of the 70s where you'd basically move into a studio and live there for 6 months and demand things and they would appear. In order to kind of have things their way, they've had to build their own space, and it's nicely modest. And even though they're selling out big arenas, they still have to be told, no, I'm sorry, lads, you can't have a brass band.
Can you imagine, though, if the label or wherever the financial backing or the advances are for these albums, wherever it comes from, can you imagine if they said, yeah, you've proven yourself, we love what you do, we're investing in the next stage of your career, whatever, the check is blank, do what you want. Can you imagine
my prediction
them with a live orchestra, a philharmonic or whatever, or something like that?
They have done, so they did an Abbey Road session with an orchestra, but that was they literally just did one song, I think. They did.
Was that like a Radio 1 session or something?
I'm not sure what it was for. I think it was just to sort of promote the album. It was they did Space off Celebration of Endings, the kind of the ballady one.
Right.
They did that with an orchestra and it's great. But yeah, and they obviously got a bit more money because on the road, that gig I saw them, they just had 2 violin players, so not even a full quartet.
Flirting with it.
They're flirting with it, yeah. I mean, it just adds a lot of money, and it's if you've got a string quartet, that's 4 people you're paying a rate every night, and you've got to drag them around Europe with you.
Yeah.
But it's funny there that even for an album they can't get it. But I think if they had a blank check, I suspect there would just a massive wall of modular synths would appear. I mean, I love all that stuff. I love the how they're kind of embracing the electronic element a bit more. I mean, it is rock at its core. Obviously, it's just balls to the walls rock, and they're playing in a practice room together, Yeah. But then they'll put these weird samples on, you had him going around the farm clacking on various bits of metal and recording it on a little iPhone mic, and then they put that in a sampler and they make a beat out of it, and then they fuck with it with flanging and stuff, and just real creative things like that.
Yeah. It's almost like that lack of I don't want to say lack of resources, but that kind of having those constraints on how physically how much personnel can be involved with what they're doing almost forces them to find new creative ways to expand that sound. And a lot of bands you'll find when they start getting to Biffy's level, suddenly keys arrive.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing on record. It clearly it lifts parts, and we could go into Ear Candy or magic dust or whatever it is that people call it.
One-time mix events.
One-time mix events. We could talk about how, you know, if you put a piano line under a vocal melody, you can really lift that melody out of the speakers somewhat, blah, blah, blah. We can go into that. But also, a lot of bands will realise that, if we're playing the Pyramid stage, or we're headlining Glastonbury, or we're playing Wembley Arena, there's more frequencies they need. There's a bigger the stage, the more shit there is to fill.
Exactly.
And you have to fill it in a way that isn't betraying the sound of the band. It's a very subtle dance, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even though they have synthesizers and they have drum machines and stuff, I feel like they are still kind of human at heart. Like Simon, I saw he was playing a lot of the parts in. They're not programmed in MIDI, which means they're not necessarily going to be bang on the grid tempo wise. And like, I think that's really important. Like when you're using synthesizers, at the end of the day, they're just another tool. Like to say that synth music is all kind of digital and soulless would just be incorrect. It's just how you use them. Right. And at the end of the day, there's only when you've got a Stratocaster, drums and bass, there's only so much you can do with that. You can stomp on as many pedals as you want, but at the end of the day, a guitar does have its limitations, and so it enhance that palette a little bit,
And do they have giggers live?
Yep. So live they have Mike Venart. He's I think it's Oceanside is the band that they're from. They have him, and he sort of does. Yeah, he just does second guitar. He takes some of the solos, the sort of lead bits, fills out the sound, and then they have Gambler, who is their keys guy. Right. And so he does for the sort of the songs that are like piano led. He'll do that, but often there's often like a sort of a pretty kind of a nasty synth running through an amp or something, just to kind of sound like a guitar. And so when you're hearing what you think is a big wall of guitar, there may actually well be a synth in there too. Right. He always looks like he's up to something, and there's all these lush pads and things. And then, on this Glasgow gig, they had, two people on strings as well, a violin player, two violin players.
What did you think of, I loved the picture of them stood on top of their van.
Yeah, me too, man.
Day. And I thought that was cool because there was I could sense the youthful pride in that. It's like, we got a van. Like, we're a fucking real band now. It's
like Green Day had their bookmobile, didn't they? There's like getting that first van. It's like, I guess someone's invested, potentially a four-figure sum at this point into the band, and it's not a piece of musical kit, but it's like, it's like what can we do now? The world, or at least the country, is our oyster. Yeah. We can just get in a van and go down to London and just do a gig. Even if there's 9 people there, we don't have to pay anyone. We just roll down.
Yeah. Well, we had access to a van and stick ones, and it really does. It just opens it up. We had conversations at one point about quitting jobs. Sounds ridiculous now. Quitting jobs, heading out into Europe. This was before we left the European Union, by the way, and literally just sort of like improvising the living, just being like, well, we'll try and book 5 gigs ahead.
Being a vagabond musician on the road.
And a part of me is inside right now is still going, let's do it.
Yeah.
But once you get that van, it just opens up, and all these bands, when they've got these bigger stages, they all look back on the times when they didn't have any money, and their guitars were slightly broken, and they had to work with the imperfections of their rig or whatever.
Simon said he used to change his strings like between songs. If they broke, he'd just change it on stage. Like, they didn't have a backup.
and you'll find these bands look back on these times of struggle and strife and whatever, and just uncertainty, as being like the most fun of all of it, and it was a great moment to see them hunt down a replica of their van. For some reason, it was so important for them. They couldn't just show you a picture of the van with them on top of it. No, they had to go and get in a van which wasn't even set up like they had it, because they had a table and stuff and coffee in there. But it was interesting because they had to get in that space, didn't they? And sit in that van and show you, here is this is the tin can we used to rattle down the
and
road
then it
in.
showed like footage, the film back then, and it's all like really close up on everyone's face because there's literally not enough room for them to get like a wide shot in their van, you know. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure with that actually. So had they literally acquired that van just to film that bit, or did that belong to James?
I think they said that James had bought a replica
Okay, right.
of the van.
Yeah.
Which seems like something you'll do once you are financially solvent.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he had a very nice house, didn't he?
yes. So I imagine it's the sort of thing you do when like you've got a bit of a comfortable living and some money to.
I mean, they had there was a whole room in James's house that just had all the records in, and that was fucking so funny, that bit actually. Them like pretending to be all coy about it. They're like, "Oh, stop filming our platinum record. Oh, double one. Don't film that one." So funny, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I'd be so proud of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It didn't come across like a midlife crisis.
No,
It didn't. But it was interesting, the fact that he'd hunted one exactly the same down.
yeah,
There is an element of, I don't know, maybe there's an element of like, and Foo Fighters did this where I think they did the garage tour, but they also, I think they were going to do this and they didn't because of COVID or something, but they bought a van, like an old van that they used to tour in, and they were going to do another tour as the Foo Fighters currently, you know, in there, obviously you can't reverse time and become a smaller band. So they were going to do the same tour as the bloody Foo Fighters in this little, like, I don't want to say Winnebago, but like whatever it was, some 9-person van or something. And they were going to go and do like relive it. So there's something very sacred about the first van.
definitely.
And that's when the real adventures begin, and I'm smiling inside a lot just thinking about the fact that I've managed to do that. And I really would recommend it to any band out there to get your hands on a van, get out in the world, and maybe make it up as you go along a little bit. But you have to get out there and experience the world via your music for a bit. It really is the most fun you'll ever have. It's great.
A fine endorsement. So I think we should do a few more like moments each. Oh, one thing I remember is the fucking that live stream event.
Yeah,
honestly, man, that was one of the things that like broke up the lockdowns for me. And the album I think came out like 2 or 3 days before they did that, and I deliberately didn't listen to it because I had my ticket for that live stream thing. And they played the album in full, and it was like so nicely shot. Like the tickets were. They weren't like super expensive, but it was like 15, 16 quid or something, which for a live stream, you're like, maybe a bit high. But then when you see it, that money has gone straight into the production, you know. And it was so well shot. It was so arty, and like it was in Barrowlands in Glasgow, but because there was no audience in there, they had like several stages. You know, they had just drum kits scattered about the place. They did have a bigger orchestra for that actually. I want to say they had about 6 musicians for that. So they had some cellos and stuff, and like, yeah, it was just incredible, man. That is honestly one of my like prevailing memories of lockdown. And then we listened to the audio of that the other night.
I was going to say I haven't seen it. I knew it was happening, but it's in the. I don't know if that's a deluxe version of the CD of that, or if it comes with every issue of the album. I think the only way you can get that album is to
on
have
the physical
that
disc. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So we heard it the other day, and the versions of the songs on that live album are heavier again.
They are, yeah. You think when you're listening to Celebration of Endings, like some of the bits of the songs, you're like, well, now surely that's as heavy as music can possibly get.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like you're going down the motorway in 6th gear, and then all of a sudden there's a 7th, and you're like, good grief, I thought we were going fast already.
It's great. It's really great.
Very ferocious stuff. Yeah. So I mean, that, you know, that if anything only, you know, built my excitement for seeing them at this Glasgow thing. So I'm pretty sure I already had the ticket even then.
Right.
So I already knew I'd be going in like another year's time to go and see them in Glasgow, and that just got me so fucking pumped for it. And like I honestly think like that needs to be more widely distributed, that concert, because it is one of the finest concert films I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, perhaps now it's they've put this documentary out. Perhaps part of the contract or something with Amazing Prime, Amazon Prime. Maybe it will appear soon on Amazon Prime.
Yes, please. Yes,
that would
please.
be great because I'd like to see it. One of the things with Biffy as well is that not only are they incredible in the studio, but they are just as good live. And that's a rare thing. That's a rare thing, is that in the studio they're a different animal to what they are live. And a lot of bands are one animal.
Yeah.
But Biffy are two animals.
Definitely. I mean, they take on a whole different vibe live. And one of the things I really like that they do is, and I'm going to pop a pin in talking about their vocal recording process as well.
Right.
But when they're doing it live, often Simon won't actually do as much of the vocals as you'd have thought. He'll sort of, be singing a chorus, and then he'll be playing his guitar so heavily he'll have wandered off down a runway or something, and you've got James and Ben singing together. And honestly, those two, I mean, I guess because they're twins, they probably grew up singing together. They've just got such a good blend.
Being twins as well, like obviously the voice, but you'll know this. The voice box is a physical instrument. Their voice boxes are probably constructed extremely similarly, but with just enough of that sort of like environmental, what's the word?
The
variables.
Random quirks. Yeah.
That their voices are fundamentally the same, but because they're two different people and live two different lives, they will have different artifacts to their voice.
It's very, very pleasing stuff. Yeah, I popped a pin in talking about their vocal recording. It turns out the secret to their sound is meticulously recording close mic vocals and layering it up, doing lovely harmonies and everything. And then when everything is said and done, just getting in a room, the three of them just have a good old shout, all three of them together, going full tilt. And it's like
it's gang vocals.
Yeah, I'd call it like a dirty layer,
Yeah.
Like you put that in there, and all of a sudden,
gruff, isn't it?
Yeah, it just adds in that, like, because if you've got your melodined lead vocal and you've got all this lovely stuff and it's all present and that, then all of a sudden you're just way back from your mic, put it in Omni mode, you have a good shout. It just adds that chaos,
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, given this is a spin-off of the Giant Pod, this sort of way of thinking about music actually came from our guest Chris Bucklow, episode 4 of the Giant Pod, in that you just asked him offhand what kind of music he was into, and he said Nirvana and Pixies, and you asked him why, and he just said Light and Shade. and I just like, fucking hell, that's it. And that's what Biffy do better than anyone, isn't it? They just go there. There'll be a beautiful melody over the crossest music in the world, or like it would be like lovely acoustic guitar and strings, and they'll be screeching and shouting over it. It's the yin and yang, the light and dark, and flipping between them. And it's like, once he sort of pointed it out in that sort of artist's way of how he passes music, I'm just like, you've nailed it there.
Well, Kurt Cobain, actually, I think someone said to him, if you could be in any band, what would you be? I think he said he'd want to be in the Pixies. I think that was right. Or they weren't his favourite band or anything. He took a great inspiration from the Pixies. And what Chris is talking about there in that Light and Shade is essentially, in a musical sense, is loud, quiet, dynamic.
Well, Lithium, perfect example.
Yeah. And so Nirvana lifted that quirk or that sort of design from the Pixies. And actually one of the first times it made me look at Biffy Clyro and think, maybe check these guys out, was I think I saw Simon Neil on the front of Kerrang, and I clocked his In Utero tattoo. And I was in such, like, Nirvana changed my life like they've changed millions of teenagers' lives. But I really was a super Nirvana fan, and I still am, really. And I saw that tattoo and I thought, well, if he's got that, maybe I need to check it, maybe, And definitely. So there's that. I'm not saying there's a direct lineage from the Pixies to Biffy Clyro, but from the Pixies to Nirvana, and then there's no mistaking that Nirvana loud, quiet, dark and shade. Biffy have expanded on that. I think
it's considerably evolved from that, because it's not just going, on off.
Yeah.
It's going. It's it's like light and shade coexisting simultaneously, and it's like,
Yeah.
and because they're bringing in these elements, and they're kind of using the studio as the instrument now as well. They just have such a more developed textural palette. They've kind of broken out of that 3-piece limitation, but keep the 3-piece thing at best. They still sound like a power trio, even though they've got 5 members now on in their live shows. Like, at their heart, they are a power trio, aren't they?
Yeah. And Nirvana were going in that direction. Obviously we're talking about Biffy. I won't talk about Nirvana too much, but Nirvana were going in that direction when they did the In Utero. When they were doing shows after the In Utero album, they got Pat Smear on the other guitar.
Right. So was he
They
just
were kind of heading in that direction?
Was he just doing like rhythm guitar and stuff?
Yeah.
Or was he writing with them or anything? Or was he
I
just
don't
a live
think so.
guy?
I think he was just panning sound out. I don't want to sort of downplay his his efforts.
No, but I mean, if he being a
but I
hired
don't
gun,
know,
it's not-
looking at his hands, what he's playing.
I mean, I would imagine, because Nirvana sort of started having a bit more guitar solos in the later stuff. Obviously, on an album recording, a guitar solo comes in, the rhythm guitar keeps going. If live, all of a sudden the rhythm guitar drops out and you go to a solo, it's like, oh, where's the song gone?
Yeah.
So I guess they just need him to kind of,
Yeah.
And I guess, if it frees Kurt up a bit as well.
Bit,
but yeah, no, you definitely you mentioned as well that there's something Cobain-esque in Simon's stagecraft, the way he sort of flings himself around and, uses his sweaty hair as part of the performance. And
absolutely.
yeah.
You've seen Nirvana live at Reading.
I don't think I have.
1992.
I've heard it. I don't think I've seen it.
Have to,
we'll do that after this.
to do it. Yeah, there's a lot going on in there. There's a lot going on in there. But one of the other bands that have opened up is or have another member to free up their frontman is Green Day.
Yeah.
Green Day do that.
They got a few now, haven't they?
Yeah. I still think of Green Day as a power trio, but they've got keys.
They've got keys.
They've got a guitar.
They've got 2 guitarists. They've got one of them is often on acoustic, even in the non-acoustic songs.
Right.
They keep him behind the amps.
Okay.
And then Jason, although Jason was technically a band member on the trilogy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because they had Uno Dos Tres, and then Quattro was the making of thing, and he was on the cover of that, and he actually played guitar on the record, which he hadn't done before. He just played Billy's other parts. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah.
The point is that there's a through line between the kind of, they still have that kind of grungy power trio thing at their heart, but they've taken it in such a brilliant direction. Would you mind passing me the myth of Happily Ever After, please?
Yeah.
Because I feel we've been talking a lot about the kind of, the Clarkson's Farm Get Back moments, which honestly is kind of what we're here for. We can all hear the album, It's nice to see it coming together, but we want to see the people behind it. But let's not mention the music too. Dum Dum, fucking banger. A Hunger in Your Horn, banger.
This is Harry's hot take.
This is my hot takes. Denier, I said during that, this is the best drum performance that Ben has ever put on tape.
It's great. And then he almost, as soon as you said that, he almost sort of echoed what you said. There was, who was it? There was someone, and whether it was him, I think he went, it's a really fun one to play. Something like that. And that's what drummers say when it's like, that's a fucking beast.
Yeah. I mean, it's got so much energy, that, Separate Missions, great stuff. That's where they're kind of really showing off the synth thing. And that's gone pretty far into synth land, but it's still balls to the walls, I think they're sending a lot of I think there's a lot of synth through guitar amps. I think that's the way they're doing it to stop it getting silly,
Yeah.
Witch's Cup. Wowee. They weren't allowed a brass band, but it doesn't matter. And Simon was saying that this song is just like makes him so happy to play, and it's so joyous and anthemic. I would love to see that live. I mean,
have they not played it yet? What
they did. So they did. The Fingers Crossed tour was another smaller venues. They were kind of doing like academy-sized venues.
Okay,
that was like kind of November last year. They did play a bit of that, but I didn't go and see them on that tour.
And what's academy size? But 800? 5 to 8?
Well, what's the O2 Bristol? I want to say it's low four figures.
I know that. Hang on, I know this.
Yeah.
Because when we toured with Dead Kennedys,
Yeah.
we were doing O2 Academies.
So it's about 800
so it's from 400 to 800.
Okay,
about.
Banging. Yeah. So they
Somewhere in there.
So, but that's going to be great live. Biffy Clyro, one of the great woers. No band does a whoa like Biffy.
The Scottish woes.
Yeah, and they've got that dirty layer in there as well. You know, they sound fat, and this has got some of the great woeing. Holy Water. I don't know. We saw any of Holy Water in the making of, but that's the one where it's got. I fucking love the ending on this. It's like a Beethoven ending where it's just like the same chord. It's like ding, 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 ding. You know, just one of those fake out endings that never end. But I don't think we saw much of that. Errors in the History of God. That one actually, that for some reason, you know, when you just listen to an album, some songs just don't really stick immediately.
Sort of pass you by a little bit.
That one had, but seeing the making of that one,
Yeah.
you need to check that one out a bit more.
Yeah,
Lots to enjoy in that. Lots to enjoy. Unknown Male #1. That was, of course, the live debut of that was at the gig. Slurpy, Slurpy, Sleep, Sleep. I haven't named them all here, but Slurpy, Slurpy, Sleep, Sleep. It's just the most ridiculous but impressive piece of music I've ever heard.
If they got a habit with last tracks on albums, because there's a bonus track on Ellipsis that in the Name of the Wee Man.
Name of the Wee Man.
I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that song.
Yes.
It's just nuts.
Yeah.
It's just that like we were saying, it's that intensity. And we'd have a when we were talking about Sick Ones again, when we were talking about the Light and Shade, we talk about how you sort of like you create, you know, you create tension and pressure, and then there's a moment where you sort of just like release the valve, and it just goes out, and that's I guess is that. It's in the Wee Man, and it's probably in this as well. It's just that there's a building up. There's a building up, and just as you think it couldn't get any more intense,
there's another layer.
The valve opens, and it just all comes flooding out. It's just great.
I think as well, like, you know, in the sequencing of that album, like I think if you listen to individual songs off that album stripped from the context, they might not land the same.
Right.
But the sequencing of it is so important. And yeah, the fact that they have that Slurpy, Slurpy, Sleep, Sleep last, which in and of itself kind of ramps up and up and up and up. But the album kind of has an ebb and flow and a shape to it too.
Right.
But it's like, they've held back that kind of, that final bleh. Like they always had that last level to go. They've had one hand behind their back the whole time, you know.
Yeah, it is great. And one thing of note as well with that album is that it feels like a Canon studio album offering, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's in the place where traditionally it's a B-sides or maybe companion album.
I call them offcuts albums,
right.
Not to suggest it's of lower quality, but like it's the stuff that they come and sort of they clean up afterwards that maybe wasn't quite ready in time for the real thing.
Right.
And so yeah, they have kind of followed that format. I don't know when they first started doing it, but certainly Puzzle, since then they've all had a kind of offcuts B-sides album.
Or a spiritual sequel.
Yeah, but this to me, this just feels like whatever it is, their 10th studio album. Like, it's got something to say in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's like it's more of a reaction to Celebration of Endings, and like it's a very interesting piece of work in that it wouldn't have happened if the Celebration of Endings hadn't been delayed and they'd all been grounded, and like they just managed to spin it and take all that kind of frustration and feeling grounded and just managed to turn it into a brilliant piece of art.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when the album, I think, spoke for itself marvelously, but then to see this, like they have been long overdue a proper expose like this, and, you know, a behind the scenes that isn't just sort of playing the studio version of the song over some sort of clipped together footage. Like we see them actually tracking, you know.
And I feel it's a bit too early in their career, even though it's been at this point, a 20-year career
at least,
or something?
yeah.
It's a bit early in their career for them to be embracing a legacy act vibe.
Yeah.
Because I still feel, even after 20 years, their next 3 albums, at least, each one of those will be very, very interesting, relevant, and fascinating works. But they're moving into this situation where they are sort of elders of British rock now.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to see, I mean, it's great to see them on that Download lineup and as a headliner.
Yeah.
Because we're running out of acts to headline things like Download from the rock thing that aren't acts like Iron Maiden and Slipknot.
You've basically got Muse
and
Biffy and The Darkness. And if they're busy,
who are you going to get? Yeah.
Coldplay.
Right.
But yeah, no, they certainly...
Architects are making moves. But yeah, that's a different realm again. But yeah.
They still have lots to give, don't they?
They've got a lot to give, but I'm hoping that this is part of them sort of embracing their legend a little and just giving us what we want, which is more of their...
More please. More please.
More Biffy.
Honestly, I mean, after Opposites is a double album. I personally still think that is their magnum opus.
Right.
I mean, I love the newer stuff, but that's a proper grown-up album, isn't it? And it's a real step up from anything they'd done before. After that, I was like, how can you have anything left to say?
Yeah.
But they do, and it doesn't dip in quality, you know. And I was actually a bit, when they announced that album, I was a bit sort of worried because it was like less than a year afterwards, I think. And it's like...
I did think, fucking hell, like already?
Yeah. But it's just, they're still getting better. And it's like, you know, when they do the next one, the Purple album, it's going to be even more ridiculous.
Imagine if there's a trilogy. I was gonna say, I mean, they've had one double album out already. In your mind, could they be considered as, you know, is it a sort of a double album released over 2 innings? I
think so. I don't think this can really be considered the sort of proper album offcuts album.
Right.
They're 2 solid albums, and yeah, I think they are. It's the Red and the Blue album double pack, man.
Yeah,
they are spiritually related. One would not exist without the other. Well, I feel like we should wrap this up.
Yeah.
This has been unfocused in traditional giant couch style, but, you know, that's all good. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's just us hanging out, having a chat about stuff we love, and, you know, you're invited.
Yeah. So, yeah, jump in the comments. Let us know, what things did you notice? Oh, one last thing I want to mention.
Yeah.
I love that bit where they were having recording issues that they had to fix by getting them to turn off the electric fence.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Very humble. But yeah, let us know, what things did you pick up on? Any Biffy stories you want to share from being a fan? Your favourite songs? Any hot takes we've said that are egregious and need correcting? Bam. Get involved.
Shout out Mon the Biff.
The fucking Biff.
Oh, before we go.
Yes.
They revealed the fucking name. They talked about the name.
Yes, and I can't remember what it was. Shall I go back and check and then we'll say?
Yes.
Right. Just before we go.
Yeah.
They have finally revealed a very important piece of Biffy Clyro lore in this.
Yes.
Which is potentially, and again, this could be another yarn they're spinning, the origin of their name. Because they've had a few stories over the years, one of which was that there was a football player called Biffy Clyro that they all liked. Again, no one can find any record of him existing. The other was that in the band's possession, they had a Cliff Richard themed pen, aka a Cliffy Biro, and then they flipped it round to make it Biffy Clyro.
I've heard that one.
I think that's the one they've been saying the most. But in this, they say it's an acronym, and it's Big Imagination for Feeling Young, 'cause Life Yearns Real Optimism.
Pretentious shit.
It's pretentious shit, big if true. And they immediately undermine it themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
But that's one thing finally put to bed.
That it is. But also, Biffy is slang somewhere in the world for like an outhouse, like an outside toilet, I think, or a toilet.
Well, there you
go. Or
go.
what the Australians would call a dunny. I think. Biffy's a toilet, I think, somewhere in some culture.
How do you think Biffy Clyro chose their name? drop a comment below.
Drop a comment.
Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.